Recording. Hi, and welcome to our Monday, first Monday magic, first Monday magic. I totally botched it. And the topic that we are exploring inside the Wildspire community this month is faith. And it came from a conversation that Tom and I were having. It wasn't about faith, but a couple times Tom used this word faith, and there was something about the way that he said it that it just leapt out at me as, oh, that's the theme that wants to be explored. Or maybe even that was just the theme that I wanted to explore. And I quickly discovered upon choosing that I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what faith is. I have nothing to say about faith. Like, oh my God, which isn't true. That was just the thinking that came to me, right? Because I actually have a history with faith. And I thought I would just start out with a little story for you around that. So I grew up in different denominations of Christianity. I was born and baptized as a Catholic. And then when I was about 10 years old, my mother brought us into a born-again Christian church, like a Pentecostal church, where you raise your hands and you sing and you get slain in the spirit and all that good stuff. So I was a believer. I had a lot of faith in what was taught to me until I didn't. And I remember very specifically one event when, and I think I was 15 years old, and I had started to see hypocrisy inside of the faith that I was taught. And the way it was taught to me was believe this because it's true. Things like you're going to heaven if you ask for forgiveness and accept Jesus as your savior. Those people are going to hell if they don't. Things like this is how you behave and act because the Bible says so. And I started to see that there were a lot of inconsistencies in that. And it kind of came to a head in some of my behavior that my mother didn't like. And she gave me an ultimatum. It was around school, actually. And it was really upsetting to me. Basically, I was going to be pulled out of public school in the middle of the school year. And either I was going to have to go to a Christian school or be homeschooled. And I had been in both of those situations before. And something inside of me knew that neither one of those choices was good for me. In fact, at the time, it felt like I was going to die if either of those happened. I think that was probably a little dramatic, but I was 15 years old. Hi, Jeff. Nice to see you. And I was so troubled, I didn't know what to do. And so I went to sleep. Somehow I went to sleep that night. I think I cried myself to sleep. And when I woke up, I knew what I was going to do. I just knew that neither of those options was happening. I was going to live with my grandmother. I didn't speak to my grandmother. I didn't ask my grandmother that. I didn't talk to my mom about it, but somehow I knew that was what was going to happen. And I knew it so much that I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm not doing either of those things you said. I'm going to live with Nanny. And as I remember it, she laughed at me. She said, well, did you ask her? And it was funny because it never even occurred to me to ask my grandmother because I was so sure that that's what was going to happen. And I used to think that that's because I was just a very naive teenager. But now it looks different to me. Now it looks like what I might call wisdom, what I might call inner guidance or natural intelligence. Something told me go that way. And it was so clear that I just knew that was what was going to happen, and I didn't even question it. You might even say I had faith, but it didn't feel like faith. It was just a knowing. And that's the first time I can remember that happening. So when I'm talking about faith, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about a nice story that you tell yourself. It looks to me like faith in the way that is most helpful is as a reminder of something that I know that I'm kind of forgetting in the moment. So something that I know is true. It's just true, whether I remember it or not, whether I know it or not, it's just true. But in this moment, it doesn't look like it. And faith is like pointing me in that direction. Faith reminds me that, oh yeah, this thing is there for you. This thing is true. So my question is like, what is that truth? What can we have faith in? What is here for us always? And I think that one of those things that's always here for us is what I discovered in that story when I was 15. That when things happened in my life and I needed a direction, and I didn't know what to do from my intellect, and none of the choices that were being presented to me felt right, felt like enough, something occurred to me. Something directed me, something bigger than me, or at least it feels like bigger than me, gave me guidance and told me what to do. And I knew it. Like nobody had to tell me about this thing, actually, for me to have an experience of it and for me to listen to it. Something in me, something in the way that I'm designed, something natural, recognized it, even though nobody really told me about it. Although when I think about it, I think people had been telling me about it in different ways. Every time when I was in church and they told me, listen to the voice of God, that's one way of talking about it. But whatever we call it, everyone I've ever spoken to about this has had a sense of an inner knowing, some kind of inner guidance. We might call it intuition, might call it natural intelligence, we might call it the voice of God, that nudges us in a direction. And people tend to describe it in a similar way. It's a still small voice. It's gentle, but firm sometimes. People experience it differently in their bodies. Some people actually hear a voice. Some people just have a sense. For me, it feels very neutral. Now I might feel it in my body, but it's not attached. It's just like turn right, turn left. Yes, no, it feels like that. And then I have a lot of other voices and a lot of other thoughts and a lot of noise in my head that's usually much, much louder and much more insistent, very emotional. And I know that that's not, when I'm at my clearest, I know that's not where this kind of guidance comes from. And that's something that and I'm checking right now as I say it, this is something that I know. And when I don't know it, I have faith. Or when I don't know it 100%, I have faith when I can't see it. Like when I'm in the midst of a shitstorm of thinking and it feels like that knowing isn't there and I don't know, and maybe it's never going to be there again. I'm like, no, actually, it's always there. Get quiet, settle, and something will occur to you. And every time that's true. Now, sometimes I'm so noisy, I'm so noised up that it takes a little while for me to actually hear it or for me to know it. I'm not going to say it wasn't there. I'm betting it was. It's like every time I take away the noise, what I need to know is here for me. It's always there. But that's not the only thing. But that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about, because I put my faith in a lot of other things that proved unworthy of it in the past. Like, I used to put my faith in things like, if I work hard, it will prove that I'm worthy. It will make me feel worthy. That one didn't work. I thought that I put my faith in the belief that if people liked me, I would feel good, right? If I helped people, it would prove that I was worthy and I would feel worthy, right? Nope, that one didn't work either. So I'm kind of curious, and the question that I want to put to you is, what do you know to be true? What are you choosing to put your faith in? If you do at all. And I want to read something, because this is another thing that just looks beautifully true to me. And it's not just that it looks true, like this is a nice belief, but this holds up to experience. So I'm going to propose it for you so you can think about it for yourself. And this comes from Byron Katie. This is a quote from her. "The only place we can be happy is right here, right now. Not tomorrow, not in 10 minutes. Happiness can't be achieved. We can't get it from money or sex or fame or approval or anything on the outside. We can only find happiness within us, unchanging, immovable, ever present, ever waiting. If we pursue it, it runs away. If we stop pursuing it and question our minds instead, the source of all stress disappears. Happiness is who we already are, once our minds are clear. When the mind is perfectly clear, what is what we want. We're happy with whatever life brings. That's enough, and more than enough." And so this is pointing to another truth, something that just is, that with a clear mind, when my mind is not filled with thoughts of my unhappiness, thoughts of distress, there's just this. And happiness is our natural state. It's a funny one to think about, right? Because I don't think most of us were taught that. Most of us were taught that we have to chase it out there and find it in something else. But all of the great wisdom traditions point us back to inside. And this is something that when I'm feeling unhappy, and when I can see the stories that I'm telling in my head in particular, or even if I can't, but I know it's happening, I know this is true, that when all of this passes away, I'm right here, where happiness always lives. And maybe happiness isn't the best word for it for everyone, because it doesn't always feel like, me. Sometimes it's actually kind of quiet, it's peaceful, it's contentment. But it definitely lives in the happy spectrum. And that looks to me something else that, like, I would want to cultivate. How does it cultivate? Do I even need to? So, like, when I'm there, faith is irrelevant. When I'm not there, faith is a beautiful pointer back to it. But the reason I have faith in the first place is because it's something that I know to be true. So I want to just open this up a little bit and see what might be occurring to you as you're listening to this. What are you noticing or thinking about maybe for the first time, or what questions might come up around it? And I'm not sure I can see everybody here. So if you can raise your hand, because I have myself pinned, um, there's a little digital hand. If you go down to the reactions button and then raise your hand, I'll be able to see you. Or you can just unmute yourself and we'll figure it out.
Well, for openers, Jeff,
Hi, Deb.
I just, it occurred to me as you were talking that I don't really think about what I put my faith in. More times than not, it's probably a very unconscious kind of program that's in play here. So, yeah, even when I get stuck, I forget about that. So it just struck me that when you brought that up, it's one layer where it's almost like I'm not showing up to myself, even in recognizing how do I have faith or not. So it's thank you for the question. The other thing that was coming up, you're really talking about, at least for me, it was reminding me of a Sufi traditions of self-remembering.
Hmm.
That for anything of this to be in place, it's like coming back to remember. I have to remember something about this for me to engage myself that way. It's something like that was coming up. So that's just my 2 cents for now.
Hmm. Self-remembering. What does that mean to you, Jeff? Self-remembering.
Well, I think it means different things. For me, it's like it's not in the narrow sense of who am I being now as a personality. It's more like in coming back home to this kind of ground, this basic way of just being. And so that's very often in the swing of things, that's in the back, recesses of the stage here, so to speak, right? So, but by bringing it back in, it returns me back to an attunement. So there's something about waking up. Oh, yeah, this essential way of being is always present, but I'm not present to it. So I remember it's a way of coming back.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. What I love about that is that it's so immediate and so easy when I do it. It's so accessible. It feels like so inaccessible when I'm caught up in overthinking and worrying and stressing myself out. But the instant I drop that, there I am, already here. So it's not a far journey back to self-remembering. It's just very reassuring. Hmm.
You just have to remember.
Well, the thing is, remembering helps, but I don't even have to remember, because even if that's the interesting thing, right? The second I drop out of it, I don't have to. Sometimes I just drop out of it. Have you ever had that? Like all of a sudden you're all caught up and all of a sudden you're just not, without even remembering. And there you are. Whew, poof. It's even kinder than just
Okay,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not necessary. It's probably a necessary thing, but I don't have to make it an effort. It's more like it is that instantaneous thing. But remembering does help a lot.
Oh yeah. I think that's like faith. Like faith is remembering. Remembering what you know, remembering where to look when you forget.
Yeah.
Remembering that there's something there for us when it doesn't feel like it. But when we're there, we don't need it. And we don't need it to get there. It just helps. And thank goodness we have it. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Jeff. Nancy, I see your hand.
How fun. What a good conversation. I I love this subject, and some of my I love your sharing of your story when you were 15, because I just had this drive towards different religions, and really got to the place where I was okay without any religion, and and it was really a trip around faith, because I would find myself in the company of, family or whatever, and they're all going to church. And it's like, in the Catholic system, you can't even go to participate really in the sacrament because, you're really not welcome. And so there's this whole, kind of thing that I would go through in my own up here thinking about, isn't it ironic that it's so near and dear to my life and my whole existence, faith, and that there's much more to life than what we see. And it occurred to me one time that, oh my goodness, that there's a path like of devotion, and a lot of the religions are practicing a devotion towards something and some kind of, you know um, whatever. And I realized that that is not my path. That my path is a path of awakening, a path of consciousness, and that when I drop out of all the story and the kind of shame that I'm not you know uh, spiritual, or that I have no regard for the sacred. It's no, I just don't have any regard for religion at this point. I just it seems to me that religion in a lot of ways, and I know this isn't for everyone, but for me it was kind of like religion was the answer rather than staying in the I don't know. There's a whole mystery to faith. And I think any religion you can really deepen into it, and it is that opening up to faith more on the experiential level. And so when you put this out, I was like, oh my gosh, I have this I have this quote of and I have it on my website, and it's Adi Shante is spiritual teacher, and he has said, faith is the withholding of a conclusion so that you allow what is to arise.
Read that again, Nancy.
Yeah, faith is a withholding of conclusion so that you allow what is to arise. And I thought, what a beautiful story that you shared, was that even as a 15-year-old, you didn't try to figure it out and figure out, you cried, you got emotional, whatever, but you went to sleep, and then just in that letting go, what arose, and that was the clarity about what would be the next thing for you. And so it's that withholding of a conclusion, is that being in the I don't know until I know. And to me, that's faith, and that's the beauty of how we are these intelligent beings that were conditioned to just ignore our own intelligence and be spoon-fed what we need to know and how we need to live and what we need to do by someone else, by some external, whether it's a religion, whether it's whatever. So I've had this long burning kind of realization that for thousands of years, we have looked to priests to tell us the answers. And it's just like that. The faith is just in letting ourselves be and seeing what arises. And I totally get that you can take, I love Joseph Campbell and his work, and I know you can take any religion and you can follow it to its you know, to the core, but I just wasn't drawn to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, obviously I like the subject.
Ah, thank you, Nancy. It's a
Mm.
beautiful, beautiful quote you brought too. And it reminds me of the Ramana Maharshi quote. And I wonder if this is faith too. Let come what comes, let go what goes, notice what remains. Like doing that, like I never have looked at faith like that before. I've never seen that. It's like not putting faith in this noise, dropping conclusions, dropping what I think about it, and letting it arise. That is not only a definition for faith, that is actually a fact. That if we do that, what is arises,
Yeah.
right? What remains becomes visible if we drop out of all that.
Mhm.
Wow. So it's sort of like faith pointing to truth. That is the path.
Mhm.
Wow. Cool. Anyone else? Because I'm thinking I might put you guys in breakout groups. I'm feeling it coming on.
I have a question in this in terms of, do you only have faith if it's in that right direction, or can you have faith that's actually misleading you? I mean, there's very often we come across things I know in my own life where, yeah, that's gonna work. I have faith in that, and that's not what's happening. So there is something about that that I think needs to be maybe
Yeah.
called out, or I need to call it out. Just
Yeah.
want to throw that out.
Yeah, that's like I think, I was considering this when I thought about all the things I put my faith in that weren't worthy of it or it didn't hold up. So kind of depends on the definition of faith we're using. I think, let me just actually pull up a dictionary definition of faith real quick. This is per the Google giving this to me, right? Fast. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. That's definition 1. Strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. So I think that kind of it depends on which faith we're talking about, right? Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So we can have a faith that is trust in what is, or trust in something we've made up that isn't. So we can have faith in, oh, something is there for me. When I can't feel it, it's there. Can have faith in that, which seems to be well placed, or I can have faith in something that somebody told me that seems sometimes to work and sometimes doesn't. And that seems not so well placed. But I want to put you into groups to think about this, to ponder this, to sit with this a little bit more yourselves, because that's the power of this exploration. I don't have answers. I mean, I started out this conversation. Some people showed up late, but I'm like, I don't know what faith is. I feel like I have very little to say about it, but I do have experiences with it. And so do you. And that's the interesting thing, is what are you seeing about it? So I'm going to put you into groups and just explore with each other. There'll probably be 3 or maybe 4 people in there. Let's see. How many people do we have? And I just want you to explore what's true about faith. What do you see about faith? And if you can, like, what's always true about faith? So dig around. You don't have to get this right. This is an exploration. I think I'm going to redo these rooms. Hold on a second. Yeah. Okay, Debbie's got to leave. So that's good. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, that's good. That's perfect. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, explore what's true about faith, and I was going to give you 12 minutes, and I'll give you time checks. So just give everybody a chance to talk. That's about 3-4 minutes each with a little time to chat. Just share, what do you see that's true about faith? And then we'll come back after that. Let's go ahead and join those rooms when you see.
Okay, take care.
Hi guys, welcome back. And I'm super curious. I would love to know, I would love to hear from you. What are you seeing new about faith? What's occurring to you that maybe you haven't thought about before this particular call? I want to hear what's new, what you're seeing. And hopefully it will spark more for me too. Claire. Whoops. Sorry, we were muting and unmuting each other.
No, I can't get. I'm done it. I've done it. I'm here. Lovely to see you all. I haven't seen you all for ages. Yeah, we talked a lot at the beginning of our conversation, Joe and Cheryl and I, about our faith kind of in this understanding in the three principles, and how, like Joe said, it's never let me down. And we've discussed that a bit in terms of, like, well, yeah, a bit like gravity, really, that we have faith in gravity. Like, I have faith that if I put my phone down on this table, it isn't going to float away. Not going to have to like weight it, not like hang on to it, because it's just going to sit there. And I have faith in that, just like on a, not in a great big faith way, but just in a kind of, yeah, every day. You don't have to think about it. It's almost like a deep embodied faith, I suppose. I don't have to think about it, because when I was a small child, I learned eventually that gravity works a certain way. And that we kind of said that the three principles is something that we kind of have utter faith now that that's how it works, how we work. And that means that we can even have faith in our rubbishy thoughts and our rubbishy feelings and be okay with those, because that's all part of seeing ourselves as this kind of whole human being, and that going through all of that is okay, and that we understand our feelings better, and we have faith that we're getting what information we need from our feelings, that they're letting us know about our state of mind. And so there's all sorts of things that I guess help us that our faith in that helps us to navigate through life on a kind of day-to-day basis, when we see it, of course, because we all have our moments when we don't. But yeah, that's kind of what came up.
Cool. And what I love about using the metaphor of gravity, that these forces that govern our existence in the three principles referred to as mind, consciousness, and thought, that are really simple, actually. Like, we don't have to believe in gravity for it to work. It just is. It just is the phenomenon that it is. We don't have to understand it. We don't have to think about it. We don't believe in it. We don't even have to notice it. It's just happening. And I think that's kind of cool when we align our faith, when our faith is in things that just are, it's solid. But I can think of times when I put my faith in many things that were not solid, that were changing. Like I used to think, when I was back in my neuro-linguistic programming days, that if my state was positive, then I would feel positive and then good things would happen, right? And it just didn't always hold up. That didn't work out that way. Sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't. It wasn't that it was a bad thing to do. It just didn't hold up for me all the time. And putting my faith in it, I got let down. But what was actually going on, the phenomenon that, for example, the three principles point to, is that if I'm thinking something that feels confident, like thinking confident thoughts, I will feel confident. And then when I feel insecure thoughts, I will feel insecure. And neither one is necessarily telling me anything about what I'm doing. but I have this awareness that I can kind of look for something new if I don't like the thought feeling that I'm in. Something else is available, it will come along. And just knowing that, it doesn't tell me how to live my life, but it's just how it works. And that's something that if I put my faith in that if I have a shitty thought right now, at some point it will go. That works. That's helpful. What else? What else have you guys been noticing? What else are you seeing? How about the other group? It looked like we heard from, oh, Cheryl, you've got your hand up. Can you unmute?
If someone from the other group wants to take a turn first, that would be fine. But quickly, one thing that I have been tossing around in my head since we've been discussing this is, does anybody in this group know any faithless people? Like someone who has no faith in anything? Because what does it do to a human? Like, I don't even, because I know people who are straight up curmudgeons who have absolute faith in their negativity and that everybody else is crappy and, you know, and that's huge for them. But who actually doesn't have faith, some sort of belief in something? Like, is it possible to be straight up faithless?
Wow. That's a really interesting question. Can you not have faith in anything? Even if I really didn't have any kind of faith as like confidence or belief, certain belief in anything, that would itself be faith, right? That I can't have faith in anything. If we think about it that way. I don't know, that's kind of a circular question. I wonder if there's a question. Like, I kind of think like, do we need faith? Is an interesting question. It seems like we have it. It seems like it's something that we do. And we can put her like almost like it's faith seems like something. I'm wondering, I don't know this, by the way. This is a question. I haven't thought about this a lot. I wonder if faith is something in our design. Like it's a part of the design to point us back to, like what it's meant to do is point us back to a place of safety and security and give us reassurance. But we can misplace that faith in something that doesn't deliver. I'm kind of wondering about that. So maybe that's why we don't find faithless people, or I don't know. I can't think of someone who's truly faithless. Because it's kind of a part of the design to point us back to truth, to point us back to peace, to when we stray, bring us back to our natural state. But I might be entirely making that up.
I think, if I may say, it's almost like you're just echoing a variation on a principle, right? In the sense that it's there all the time, it's universal. But what's occurring to me as we're talking, there's actually almost like the distinction between the formless and the form. In that, the moment we're trying to conceptualize or talk about faith, we start getting into this conceptual realm here, and versus in of itself, it is nothing. It has no thingness about it. So that's what I meant by it being kind of a principle in a sense, as opposed to a content.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about, sometimes when I'm talking about my faith, it's struggling as to what is it really about, because inherently it's formless. It's before, attaching it to something. So anyway, I was just struck by that.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jeff. I saw hands, and then did they go down? Sam, did you want to say something? Oh, you do have a hand. I see it there still.
I do have a hand. Oh, I can take that down. Hi. This is so interesting. And then everyone's different shares are all just coalescing in my mind, and it's expanding. So First, I was just really struck by what you said earlier, Stephanie, about just this idea of faith kind of more, how do I say this? Okay, I was thinking earlier about faith being there when you kind of when you need it and when you're not in that place of faith. But then with Claire's share about gravity, it's like, oh yeah, but then there's faith is just there's times when faith is just naturally there. You're not thinking about it, it's just happening. You're kind of acting in faith, but we're not thinking about it as faith because we're just interacting with gravity because it is the way it is. And then with what you just put back together of kind of that draw back towards safety makes sense. And I just keep thinking about my experience. I had a big faith experience this weekend where it came up because I was in a position where I felt out of safety and I was out of my emotional center and way out there, and just had this knowing that I was okay, and whichever choice I made to navigate through this situation, I was going to be okay. And the faith appeared because there was resistance. Like that faith in knowing I was okay, I was able to see that faith because I didn't feel safe, and because I didn't, like, I had all this external stimuli that was telling me, like, and logic and my mind and all the stories were coming up to say, it's not going to be okay if I make this choice, and it's not going to be okay if I make that choice, and it's not going to be okay if I make this choice, and all these possible things could go wrong. And that was when faith arose to tell me, I will be okay. You can make whichever choice and you're going to be okay. And so in the end, I made the choice that seemed the scariest as a way of practicing faith, to say, okay, since even though I don't feel in my body that I'm going to be okay making this choice, I feel fear. I can hear that knowing, and I know that knowing is true. So I'm going to make the scariest choice as a way of sort of testing faith to prove to me that I could trust it. And it did. And it was all okay. And it ended up working out more beautifully and than I had imagined any of the scenarios could go. And like it just like miraculously was okay. And that was where faith became visible, in the place where I was out of that position of safety. Thanks, Stephanie. This was so helpful. And like, what was that faith thing? Yeah, I was out of safety, or believed I was.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, you believed you weren't safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that I saw about safety this weekend. Now that you're saying it, it's coming to mind, so I'm going to share it. And I think it's related. So, like, if somebody's feeling really unsafe, and I say, no, you're always safe, they're going to be like, bullshit. You know, like, what are you talking about? And what I saw was the distinction of the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual. So in the physical realm, sometimes our bodies are not safe. Like, they're not physically safe. There could be a danger of some type, right? So that is one type of unsafe that happens. Then in the psychological, there is the feeling of not being safe, which could come from the experience of actually something in my body, but most often the unsafe is just in here. It's like, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. You know, we're freaking out. And it's psychological. So that's variable, right? Sometimes we can be unsafe there, but on the spiritual level, the level of all that is, we are always safe. That is where safety lives. And seeing that, for me, really changed something. Because sometimes I've been speaking to the spiritual and people can feel it, but then they're confused. But then how come I feel unsafe? Or what happens if somebody puts a gun to my head and I have a threat, right? Like, spiritually, you're safe. Your body may not be safe. And certainly you can always often have feelings of unsafety psychologically. But when we come back to the spiritual, that which is, it helps us navigate those other feelings and experiences of not safe. And that's kind of what I'm hearing in your story, Sam, was that you had a lot of, I don't know if there was a physical component, but there was a psychological component for sure of I'm not safe, and it won't be safe if I do this or I do that, perhaps. And probably felt that in your body too, because the three kind of are all connected, right? They're not separate, because we are this spiritual reality that is always dwelling in safety. And that to me is like what arose and said, no, you're going to be okay. You're okay no matter what happens. It doesn't mean everything goes right in the physical. And it doesn't mean I always feel that everything's going right psychologically, but it's so, I mean, that seems like the source of faith, what faith points back to, like this, when it's aligned. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, totally. That was exactly it, where it was all related to a car breakdown on the freeway in the rain late at night and far from home, and then all the kind of financial possibility things that would happen. So it was a lot of the, like, in the end, my body was physically safe. It was a little scared for a while, but then there was all that, like the financial safety and everything. And it was coming back to, okay, no matter what happens with the car, no matter what ends up happening on those physical, psychological levels, it was, yeah, that kind of ultimate spiritual state of wellness, and it was going to be okay.
Wow. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to have faith in and to see. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so we've come to the end of our time together for this meeting. And I haven't yet shared my videos on faith. I have 2 done and more coming about what I'm seeing about faith, really mostly posing questions about it, because that's what I'm seeing is questions like, wow, what is this thing? And that'll be in the Wildspire community. So if you are there, look there. If you're not there, you can join for free at wildspire.me. So it's wildspire.me. And thank you so much for coming today. It's been beautiful to see you. And I will see you again soon, hopefully. Enjoy your day.
You too. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.